Welcome everyone to the next edition of the DK Down Under Show, presented by dailyfantasyrankings.com.au in conjunction with our partners rotogrinders.com for all of your AFL daily fantasy needs on DraftKings. Smatho 10 here with a big heft for another show of breaking down AFL Daily Fantasy. We're here to break down Friday night round 7, which is Essendon playing the Western Bulldogs. Let's bring in Hef. How are you going today, mate?
Very good. Interesting couple of teams up here on the Gold Coast. That's a good spot for a holiday. So we'll see if the Bulldogs have finished their holiday that they apparently had last week against Carlton.
Yeah, what a win by my boys, Carlton Blues. Poor old Bulldogs here. They're going to try and back up after 5 days here against the Bombers. So currently it's nearly a coin flip for this particular match. It's the Bombers are actually minus 118 to the Bulldogs minus 105. Spreads at a measly 1.5. And the total's at 123.5. We're looking at normal conditions there up on the Gold Coast. Can be a little bit greasy at night, so just bear in mind that key forwards might have a little bit of a hard time with the footy. Now, at the time of recording, we don't have the team selections or team lists for this particular match, but make sure you look at afl.com.au or at rankingsdfs on Twitter for final teams at one day before the match. But we do know at the moment that Con McKenna for the Bombers does have a broken finger, but he had surgery during the week, so hopefully he might be able to get up, so make sure you check out news there. But Dylan Shield won't be playing. He got suspended for his rough conduct bump over the weekend. Hayden Crozier for the Bulldogs has served his suspension and is likely to come in for the Bulldogs as well. So, Hef, any general thoughts on this particular slate before we break down this particular match?
Well, I'd sort of expect McKenna to play. He beat the virus, so surely a little broken finger's not going to stop him. I think the Bulldogs are going to bounce back here. I can't pick the winner, but I can't see them rolling over like they did last week.
All right, so let's build a DraftKings core, as we always do on the DK Down Under Show, to help our viewers around the world are playing DraftKings AFL. So, as always, we start here with the ruck position. And, this ruckman here, Tim English, has made a bit of a name himself as a bit of a fantasy legend this particular year. We've potted him in the past in other shows of the Down Under Show, but now at 7,000, I just can't see any other options for Tim English, but you're going to tell me otherwise, aren't you?
Nah, you've basically convinced me about English, but the only thing I will say is Andrew Phillips has done a really good job in his past 2 games, the first 2 games for Essendon, and he's come up against Grundy and Goldstein, and they are basically 2 of the top 3 rucks in the comp at the moment. I expect Phillips is going to dominate English in all the ball ups and the bounces, so he's going to get a heap of hit outs. English is going to dominate around the ground, but if you are looking for a contrarian play, I don't think Phillips is the worst. He's got a pretty good floor with the amount of hit outs he's going to get.
So would you say 70?
You can put in English if you want to.
I'll put in English in our core, but say if
English is top pick, but if you think everyone's going to play English, Phillips isn't hopeless. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Well, let's do like a 70-30 split then. If you're going to build 10 teams, 7 out of 10 will probably suffice. All right.
I know you love playing English, though. You're very jealous of his hair.
I have turned around on English. I thought he was no good, and look at me not putting him in my teams over the last few weeks. But yes, he's got wonderful hair. And it is wonderful manners as well. If you ever see him speak, he's just like
very proper.
Very proper and regal, almost. All right, let's move on to defence. And if you make sure you check out the tools on the Daily Fantasy Rankings website and go to our points against tool, which we're going to harp on this particular tool. It's one of the best tools that you can use for daily fantasy. We can see here that the Bulldogs and the Bombers do leak points down back, but at the same rate. So it means that all options are pretty much on the table, and there are a lot of options in the $5,000 to $6,000 mark here. So is there anyone you want to particularly look at this particular range, or are you looking at paying down at this position?
Look, this is a really even slate, first of all. There's no real trends to follow that I could see, and there's a lot of players who are all in this sort of $4,000 to $6,000 range. So my tactics will be more around construction more so than picking certain value players. I'll be looking to build lineups with a couple of Essendon backs or a couple of Bulldog backs, and trying to land on which team sort of dominates the ball. In terms of value, I think one of your favourite young players, Louis Butler, is still only 3,600 here on DraftKings, so he'd be my number one value target in the back line.
He actually top scored for the Bulldogs in the defence last week, outscoring his other players such as Johannesson and Caleb Daniel. So at that particular price, I'll put him in the core, but you have plenty of options, as Hef would say there, to plug in as your second.
We might just discuss Essendon quickly too, because we've got a little point to bring up in the forwards. But
go ahead.
My favourite Essendon players would be Hurley and Jordan Ridley. Jordan Ridley's the man that they like to go through when they change direction of the ball in the back line. So he gets a lot of +6s with mark kicks. Pretty new player to the team, but 6,300 still reasonable for the way he's playing, I think.
All right. We've got two options then. Let's Ridley and Butler go straight in. All right. Let's look at the midfield. So first question to you is about obviously Shield now out of the Bombers midfield. Obviously, he's now suspended, but as you alluded to the Draft Star show, that he didn't do much last week anyway, so you do have some options for the Bombers. So who's looking to step up for Essendon?
Yeah, Shield was tagged last week, and that put paid to him. Parrish was the obvious guy who stepped up. He scored 72 with added midfield time, which he was drafted as a midfielder, Parrish, and there's been a lot of talk why he hasn't been in there. He's been stuck up forward. So he relished the chance to be in the midfield. I'd expect similar again, and at 5,000, he's very reasonably priced. Now we've got David Zaharakis here at 4,500. He's a straight midfielder only on DraftKings. A long career of being very fantasy relevant. Zaharakis, it looked like running out of steam this year. He had some pretty ordinary performances until he bounced back last week with his best game of the year. Now, Zaharakis isn't necessarily going to be in the midfield, and he has struggled with this new role that he's got, mainly off a half-forward flank. I'm still a bit wary of Zaharakis, so at 4,500, I don't think he's quite the lock that his last week's score might suggest that he is. My favoured value option here for Essendon would be Mitch Hibberd, who had 66 last week. He was touted as an inside midfielder when they acquired him this year, Essendon, and at 3,200, he is very, very well priced.
Oh, so I've got Team English and I've got Hibberd as pretty much my keys here. Let's talk about the Bulldogs. Now, the Bulldogs did lose last week, but they actually had their midfielder outscoring the Carlton midfielder through fantasy-wise. So that's a quirky, wouldn't say quirky thing. It happens quite a lot. You know, teams that do lose on the scoreboard still are fantasy relevant. Bulldogs mids, they're highlighted by Jack McCraig and Hunter, etc. Can we look at Bulldogs regardless of the result?
Look, we can. We know what we get with the Bulldogs mids. They're reasonably consistent, and they do dominate the ball when they get a hold of it. They can't necessarily put that dominance on the scoreboard a lot of the time. You mentioned McRae and Hunter, both very good options. My favourite player is Bontempelli, the captain. There doesn't look to be a tag for Bontempelli in this game, so he's always on my radar when that is the case. He is taggable, Bontempelli, because he doesn't have fantasy front of mind. He does a lot of little 1% things for the team. Almost acts as a decoy when he's got someone running with him, and he's happy for others to do the job instead. But at 6,800 with no obvious tag on the horizon, he's definitely in play for me.
All right. The Bont is going into this core lineup. All right. Forwards. Now, there's a lot of dual position players here, so we're going to have a lot of options, you know, stacking your midfield with a couple of midfield forward options. But like, look, you can rattle them off. You need two hands here. Let's just concentrate on the single options first. If there's any options here that might be contrarian play, and then obviously you can touch on the dual ones.
Okay, I set this up with the back line when we talked about English Essendon defenders. I've got English on the mind, thanks to you, Smatho.
Thank you.
But there's a guy here in the forwards at 3,700, Orazio Fantasia. Yes, he's a great name, but the thing about him is he's not playing as a forward at the moment. He's been switched down to the half-back line. So if you are really dead set on Essendon possessing this ball, over-possessing the ball even in the back line, you can play Orazio in your forwards with a couple of Essendon defenders and get massive exposure to that eventuating. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with Fantasia. I think he's really well priced considering he had 60 odd last week at that 3,700. So that's definitely an angle I'm looking to explore. Like you say, though, there's a lot of these midfield options. Parish we've talked about. Bailey Smith is an absolute jet, second-year star. Devon Smith and Kyle Langford for Essendon are also guys who possibly take up more midfield time with the absence of Shield now in the side. So there's a ton of options there, and I do like playing the mid forwards in my forward line where possible, rather than relying on the guys who are stuck playing up forward for the whole game.
All right. Well, let's just plug in Fantasia, and then you can also have your pick of those particular players for your builds. Hef, any final thoughts on this particular game? It is a very, very balanced game on the markets and fantasy-wise, so build balance or go for the stacks for the win?
Look, I would be building a range of teams. You can definitely play an Essendon stack and you can definitely play a Bulldog stack. I think it's going to be a really tight leaderboard. And, fingers crossed, that's the best I've got.
Well, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Daily Fantasy Rankings for further AFL DraftKings content. It's a huge round this round. We've got 5 days of footy coming up, so that's 5 contests on DraftKings. So make sure you sign up to DraftKings if you have not done so, or make sure you get the Daily Fantasy Rankings as well for all of our AFL content throughout the season. Hef, it's been another nice, sharp show from you today, mate. Thanks for all your help for this particular match.
Thanks, mate. I've got somewhere to be, so we kept it sharp.
Very good then. All right, enjoy that. And we look forward to seeing you on the next edition of the DK Down Under Show. Catch you then.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.